During the Great Recession, like 2006, 2008 timeframe is when things started to get a little more difficult, not extremely difficult, but just difficult. And that's when, there's an example, right? We had to move from the house that we used to have, and in general terms, it used to be pretty big. And then we had to downsize because, well, we didn't have that, the means to do it anymore. So that change itself was difficult. And, my dad tells a story, and I definitely don't know all the details, but he used to work in a rope making factory down in Tucson, which actually came from California. It was a long life company, but the owner was affected by the Great Recession at that point in time, and decided to sell the factory to Vietnam, so offshore. And though he offered my dad, I think, a position to go offshore and help build the factory and help train the workers, it would have been too much. So my dad just took the last check, and that was about it.
Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good, man. Thank you for asking. Thank you so much for the support, for allowing us to interview you.
Of course.
So, how old are you?
I am 29.
Okay. And what are you from?
I'm originally from Tucson, Arizona.
Now, what do you do for a living?
I am an intelligence analyst.
What social class were you growing up?
I would put ourselves maybe like lower middle class, or at least that was the way I felt, where we had enough to get by, live comfortably. And then I guess if we didn't have or had more, I guess my parents never really made it known to us. Yep.
Now, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Growing up, again, it wasn't too challenging, but definitely during the Great Recession, like 2006, 2008 timeframe is when things started to get a little more difficult, not extremely difficult, but just difficult. And that's when, there's an example, right? We had to move from the house that we used to have, and in general terms, it used to be pretty big. And then we had to downsize because, well, we didn't have that, the means to do it anymore. So that change itself was difficult.
Did your parents lose their jobs, or was it just like a cut on their paycheck? What happened?
Yeah, so with the Great Recession, my dad tells a story, and I definitely don't know all the details, but he used to work in a rope making factory down in Tucson, which actually came from California. It was a long life company, but the owner was affected by the Great Recession at that point in time, and decided to sell the factory to Vietnam, so offshore. And though he offered my dad, I think, a position to go offshore and help build the factory and help train the workers, it would have been too much. So my dad just took the last check, and that was about it. So it was challenging, and that's how it happened. Yeah.
Excellent. So now, what do your family talk about money in general?
So yeah, I think so. But it wouldn't be very, not like stock market in Wall Street terms, right? It would be very like, hey, mijo, like in Spanish, right? Mijo, guarda tu dinero, nunca va a ser cuando lo haces, to like save your money for when you need it, because you never know when you're gonna need it, right? So it was always very like a frugal kind of thing. It was never like a, hey, mijo, like invest your money to get more up from it. It was always save your money so you can maybe use it on a rainy fun day.
Excellent. Do you recall your first interaction with money?
I don't remember like the first instance where I finally realized hey, this is a dollar bill, right? But one memory that always stays with me is, I think I don't know for what reason, I don't know if it was a birthday or something, but my mom gave me $20, $20 bill. I'm like, wow, that's so much money. And then almost instantly, it went to like the next store, like a food, I don't know if it was like a Food City or the Target or something. We went somewhere, and the next thing you know, I'm buying a freaking toy, and so that was my first like true like memory of like, this is money and I can buy something with it. And yeah,
you felt the power of the paper.
Yes. I don't know who's on there. The Benjamin Franklin. No, that's $100 bill.
No, that's the Franklin has 100. On the 20th is Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah.
There you go.
What is the best financial advice you have ever received, and who gave you that advice?
Yeah, I think thinking about it, one of the best financial advices was from my then girlfriend, now my wife. And she was always like, hey, why don't you have any credit cards for her? And I'm like, well, because my other advice, not necessarily bad advice, just another advice that was given to me was, because they're bad, get debts. But she's like, oh, what if you get your credit card, buy your daily expenses, like, your groceries, or if you go out to eat, that kind of thing. Everything that you would buy with your debit card, like your checking account, do that, but with your credit card. And at the end of the month, or, before billing cycle, or just as soon as you can, pay off the credit card. That way you're using your credit, you open a line of credit, and you're getting like, your points and stuff like that. At that point, I'm like, I don't know what that is. But she's like, but do it. I'm like, okay. And then, and you build your credit, but you're not necessarily getting in debt. And I think that was probably still is one of like the best financial advice.
When did you open your first credit card?
Oh man. I think I was probably 20 years old, maybe 19 or 20 years old.
Do you remember your first limit?
It was probably like $800, $1,000. It was a Discover card. I still have the account, but it was a Discover card.
What is the worst financial advice you have ever received, and who gave you that advice?
So I don't think I've ever received like bad financial advice. Like, here, go do this one thing because it's gonna be awesome. And now thinking about it, I have two. But not necessarily that much advice. It's more like, if I were to give this bad advice to someone, this is like the worst advice. Is I say that because it almost happened to me, where I joined the Marine Corps. It was like my first main real job, technically, and I get my first paycheck, and I'm feeling like I'm flying high in the sky with this new paycheck, and I can buy whatever I want. So I go to the dealership, and I'm about to like buy this new car that like is pretty much at the limit of when I'm getting paid. But I'm thinking, I get my paycheck every 2 weeks and stuff like that. Anyway, long story short is, I almost did it, but I didn't, So the bad advice there would have been like, as soon as you get your paycheck, go buy yourself something nice. And not that you shouldn't, but it's more like, be very, think about it. Don't just go out there.
I do believe that it would be cool if you share that story. So,
yeah,
would you be okay with that?
Yeah, of course.
So what happened? I mean, like, you wanted to buy a new car, and I mean, okay, so walk me through it. So you get the paycheck, and then after that, would you mind sharing how much it was on your paycheck?
Yeah, I think so. At E1, which is like the lowest rank in the military, no matter what branch you're in, E1, you make, at least back in 2013, you were making anywhere from $600 to maybe $750 every pay period.
All right.
So that's about $12 to $15 a month, give or take. And so I got that paycheck, and again, during high school, I was making. I was working part-time at a shoe store, orthotics shoe store, and I was maybe getting like $300 a month. So getting $1,500 a month was, 5 times the difference. I'm like, well, this is awesome. And so there, yeah. So like, I had my car, it was a working condition and stuff like that. But I'm like, but I can get my new car. So
what car were you gonna get?
I think back then it was a Mazda 3, turbo and all that stuff. It had like the Bose system, sound system in it. That's that kind of thing. And
all the bells and whistles.
All the bells and whistles.
So you actually made it to the dealership. You actually looked at it. I'm surprised that, usually when you go buy a car, you have a car salesman, and that's their job, right? To get a sale. Were they pushy with you, or?
No, actually, so we actually technically almost bought the car. I actually drove it off the lot and took it home.
What?
And what happened was, I thank God for it. So I never signed any financial paperwork, because if I remember right, it's something along the lines of like their finance system was down or not working. So like, don't worry, we signed the contract, like the selling contract from like the business end. Just take it home. We'll sign the rest of the paperwork tomorrow. And so when I went back home, like my dad talked to me, my then girlfriend and my wife talked to me. My other family talked to me, and they're like, "Why did you buy a car?" They talked me out. Especially my dad. He's like, "Miko, go back, go get your car, and go give it a car wash, and you're gonna be okay."
You traded your other car?
Yeah.
So you actually left it at the dealership. Man. Now,
it was a full process. Yeah.
I honestly, how did you do that? Like, you get home, you have this new Mazda, you're feeling like, hey, I'm the king of the road, right? I have everything. And then you have to go back at the next day and be like, hey, you know what? Never mind. Like, I want my car back. They just say like, okay, here you go. Or
yeah, they fought a little bit, right? Because they're like, but you signed here, you signed there, and what we had going, or like my dad was like, but you never signed anything financial, right? I'm like, well, no, like you technically never paid for it. Yeah. I'm like, well, you're right. And so I went back there, and I kind of followed them a little bit, right? They were pushy, like, but you signed. And I'm like, but I didn't pay anything for it. You just let me go with it. They're like, well, that's true. And I'm like, well, I still haven't paid for it, so technically it's still not mine. Can you just give me my car back? And anyway, yeah, they finally gave me my car back. But
Do you recall the overall price of the vehicle?
I think then it was like 25,000 maybe, with like a 7% interest rate.
Oh, wow.
Which in military lingo culture, I was the typical new military dude in your unit that gets there and is like, hey, I just bought myself a $20,000 car with like a 10% interest rate. And we're like, the sergeant would have to be like, why'd you do that? That kind of thing. So
Good thing is that you went through the process, you learned about it, and hey, there was not a repercussion out of it. You actually just got to experience it and went back to square one. So, man, that's a cool story. All right. So, what is the best financial decision you have ever made?
I think buying our house when we did was probably the best financial decision. I guess it wasn't necessarily planned, right? We do have some like lifelong family friends that kind of helped us make the decision. Like, hey, you should probably buy now. And my wife also, and her family has some family friends that were like, hey, you should probably buy now. But it wasn't necessarily like because everything's gonna go like super expensive. It was just, you should probably just buy now. We were financially able to do it, and so we did. And I think when we bought it, and for what we bought it for, has been good.
When did you buy it?
I think it was April 2019.
Wow. How much did you pay for it then?
So I think originally it was $240, give or take. Yeah.
And what is the price of the house right now?
I think we use HomeBot or something like that. Anyway, or Zillow, and I think their estimate is like 390 maybe. Almost four.
Almost four. From 240 into almost 400,000. $160,000 difference in 4 years. That's insane. And then, before we had the interview, you said that you actually had to refinance it to get a better interest rate. So what did you have at first?
Yeah, so I think the interest rate for the house was about 3.75, like 3.8 or so. And then with the VA, the Veterans Affairs program, that's how we got our house first, right? As former military. But then they also have an interest rate reduction loans, where it's called the IRRL. And through that program, you can get your interest rate lowered without having to get your house reappraised. So you don't have to worry about getting like your house mortgage increasing. It's just you pay for a lower interest rate, and it kind of pays for itself over the course of the loan.
And yeah, I've always heard, that the best way to buy a house is through a VA loan. And of course, you do have to serve this country to do that, And can you please share with us some of the benefits of using a VA loan when you buy a house?
Yeah, I think one of the main benefits actually is the no money down, right? The no deposit. So though you kind of get hit on it in the sense of like you have a bigger mortgage to pay, but because you don't have to put any money down, you don't have to worry about, saving up the 10, 20, 30, whatever, how much, whatever percentage, 10%, 20% of the house is. Another plus about it is that you don't have to pay what's called property mortgage insurance, which I think if I have it right is something along the lines of traditional home loans. If you don't have the 20% or more in down payment, you have to pay what's called a PMI, right? Property mortgage insurance. And that's on top of like your home insurance and other stuff. It's an extra payment. So through the VA home loan, you don't have to pay that as well. And so it's just another plus. It helps out a lot. And when it comes to like lenders, it's VA home loan is, maybe to clarify it, right? A VA home loan isn't necessarily the government giving you money to go buy a house. It's telling the lender that if the individual who's using the VA home loan can't make the payments, the government will help pay. I'll lose the house, right? But the government will pay the lender, so they feel more comfortable, lending the money to, VA home loan applicants or that kind of thing.
That is awesome, honestly. Yeah. Now, what is the worst financial decision you've ever made?
Worst financial decision, I think it wasn't anything like drastic, like I thank God for it, right? It wasn't like we lost our house, right? But it definitely, like looking back at it, is like, oh man, it could have gone a lot much better, right? I had a couple, I think it was about almost $2,000, give or take, in some stocks back in 2015, 2016. And as the And I'll say the company was AMD, right? Advanced Micro Development, something like that.
Yeah, those guys like
It's the Intel's competitor.
Yeah.
So Intel chipset competitor. And so they were trading at like $8 maybe, a share. Well, even more, less, like $3 or $4 a share.
And when was this?
This is like 2015, 2016 time.
Very early on.
Yeah, and this is when they still had their AMD, like I think they called it like their A64, A68 chipsets, not comparable to Intel. But this is when they were also developing their new what's called Ryzen chipset, but it was still like prototype. They hadn't launched it yet, so the stock was like way down here. And then as news came out about the new technology, the stock started to rise, and I need to buy right now. So I started buying. And then the first quarter, when the new chipset came out, reviews came out, and they're like, "Oh, it isn't as good as Intel's," and stuff like that. So the stock started to, tumble. I'm like, "Oh, I need to get out of here because it's going to go back to like negative territory, like zero territory." And so I sold all my stock, and I was done. And then fast forward now, and especially maybe a year or two ago with the whole COVID tech, boom.
Yeah.
I mean, we were looking at AMD being like almost $100 a share. And so, although I had a little bit in it, that little bit could have been, a lot more. Yeah. So my worst financial mistake was to
Selling AMD.
sell AMD. Yep.
How would you describe your relationship with money?
I think it's good. I have my spreadsheet I kind of use every month. Especially when it comes to like pay your bills, time. And it's usually somewhere in the middle of the month, right? Sometimes it goes like a little bit later, like, you're like pushing buttons really quick. But I want to say it's good. I think myself, I speak as if I'm like only for myself, but definitely my wife is my better half. And so we work together with our budget, and not always making sure that we're within our means. And if there's ever a purchase that kind of exceeds that, we talk about it a little bit more and make sure that we're, not going out of bounds, But I think our relation with money, I speak to my family as well, in that regard, is good, and I think we're good with money. To put it that way.
Are you comfortable with your current financial situation?
I'm extremely blessed, and I know that's a cliche at times, like, oh, I'm just blessed, but genuinely, there's a hard work, that one puts in, and you kind of bear the fruits of your labor, right? But in general terms, I think, we're good.
If you could go back in time and change one financial decision, which one would it be and why?
I think buying a house earlier would have been a financial decision. I was close to doing it, and I don't know what necessarily. Oh, I know what. We moved. I got shipped to Okinawa. That's what happened. Good old Marine Corps, right? Being in the Marine Corps, right, you kind of get thrown all over the place. But I had it in mind when I first, a couple years in joining the service. I started getting my steady paycheck, build my finances and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, what if I buy a house now, and throughout my time, I can start paying anyway? I should have done it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Excellent. We're going to go over our first section called Would You Rather.
Of course.
The way that it works is that I'm going to give you this container, and then you just got to be pulling one number at a time, total of 5 questions, whenever you're ready.
30.
Would you rather drive an old and ugly car but have a mansion, or drive a brand new sports car but have a 1-bedroom apartment?
Oh, man. Well, I'm halfway there because my car is still old and ugly. So I think I'd rather do the old and ugly car.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go with the second one.
2.
Would you rather end student loan debt forever or end credit card debt forever?
I think I would end student loan.
All right, let's go over the third one.
17.
Would you rather have a monthly car payment of $1,000, which you almost did, or have a monthly $1,000 credit card payment for a department store?
I would probably do the department store. Yeah. Depending on the department store, it could be, it could be $1,000 worth of, furniture, food, groceries, compared to a car. So,
all right. Excellent. Let's go over the fourth one.
12.
Would you rather marry someone rich who cheats on you once, or someone with no money who is faithful?
Definitely the second. Doesn't matter. Yeah, being faithful is definitely more important.
I knew that would be an easy one for you.
Right.
Let's go with the last one.
Number 8.
Would you rather stay in your current job forever or change careers completely every year?
I think both are something I'll be interested. I'll be honestly, so long as the changing the jobs every year, without sounding too egotistical, included some sort of like incentive to do so. But I wouldn't mind staying in my job either. I love what I do. So
We'll keep that one neutral then. Excellent. All right. So that was the last one. Now we're going to go over a second section called What Do You Think? Is the same activity. You just pull 5 numbers one at a time whenever you're ready.
all right, 14.
What do you think? How can someone save more money?
I think by having a constant like view, awareness of your money, how much are you making every month, every week, every hour, and then how much are you currently spending, and how much do you want to spend?
Let's go over the second one.
21.
Is it better to pay cash for everything or pay overtime?
I think paying in cash is definitely the better option, but sometimes paying in installments isn't bad either. Again, if you plan it for it and you're able to make those payments over the however long it is, but paying cash is probably the best way to go, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Let's go with the third one.
Yeah.
Should couples share bank accounts or have separate accounts?
Well, personally, we share. We have like a joint account, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I understand that maybe some individuals, especially with like their backgrounds, their histories, they might have some more called trust issues, right? And you just never know, right? For some they might work to have a joint, and it helps keep an eye, especially it helps both parties know, like, hey, this is how much we have, I know kind of thing, and it's not like hey, this is how much I have and I have no idea what you have, and it makes things a little more difficult. I think it depends on who you are, right? Yeah. But I would say joint.
Excellent. All right, let's go with the fourth one.
6.
How much does our credit score impact our financial opportunities?
For example, if you're gonna go apply for a house loan, like kind of what we talked about already, if you have something like a 400, 500, it might be pretty tough to get a lender to lend you money. And if they do, they'll probably tack on a pretty high, already kind of high, but a higher interest rate, or they'll request more down payment, right? So it's important.
All right, let's go with the last one.
3.
Is it better to rent or to buy a house?
I think buying the house is probably my way forward. Only because, especially in the longer term, right? If you're thinking about a year, just to maybe get your feet planted in a certain area, a new city kind of thing, maybe renting might be a way to go. But if you're thinking more than a year, 2 years, 3 years, then I think buying a house would be better. That way, the money that you're putting into where you're living can maybe pay you back as you leave, if ever. So
excellent. Finally, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience? Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think being able to manage money is always important. I've kind of talked about it already and some other questions, but always having a visibility of what's coming in and what's going out of your account. We all have phones, like 99% of us have phones, right? So most of us have phones. We'll have some sort of like financial app on there, right? Whether it be our bank account or credit account app. And so we're able to know how much we're spending and where it's going. And we're also able to know when money comes in, right? If you have like a direct deposit, or if you're depositing money into your account, or if you're just getting cash. My point is, we all have the means to do it, and it's just a matter of doing it. And I think that financially speaking, it goes a long way, knowing what's going on in your personal account or accounts. If you have multiple, and then lastly, I share this openly, and I share with in good faith, that definitely money doesn't make someone purposeful. Money doesn't necessarily bring purpose out of life. And being bold here, I think that, and sharing it very plainly, we all need purpose in our life. And I think that if we're looking for money to bring us purpose, we're going to fall short. I think that the only fountain of purpose that we can find in this world is truth. And there's only one individual that I've come to find that has made this claim. He says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me." And that's the person of Jesus Christ. And I don't want to make this any like, big thing. But I share it because it genuinely is a conviction I have that if there's any advice I can give to anyone in this short amount of time, money is awesome. It's it's something that it's a tool in life that we use to get from point A to point B. But at the end of the day, there's some things that are greater than what we are here in this life, and that is truth, and that is Christ. That He has come to die for our sins, and He was buried for 3 days. On the third day, He rose again, resurrecting from the dead, and now offers to anyone who believes in Him, calls out on His name, everlasting life and remission of their sins. And I think that if anyone comes to understand that truthfully, we'll have a greater purpose. We'll find a greater purpose, and we'll utilize, for example, finances to bring about better things in life.
Excellent. Paul, thanks so much, man. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please support the channel by subscribing, commenting, and liking the video. The question of the day is the following. Let me know your opinions, thoughts, comments, and constructive criticism in the comment section, and I will see you guys on the next video.